Today, I wanted to answer some questions that most people have for me about entrepreneurship. And a lot of people want to know, like, how did I get started? What kind of, you know, was my starting point? And what are some of the best practices and approaches to doing things, to starting and growing a business? And so I want to answer some of those questions today. The first question is like, how did I get started? And it's an interesting story because I kind of fell into entrepreneurship. I was in school and I was going to school to become a professor, an English professor, literature. And I was in a program called the Ronald McNair Scholars Program. And with the program, each summer you would have a mentor and they would kind of walk you through the path of the professorate, the path to becoming a professor. And one of the things you have to do when you're a professor is you have to do a lot of research, writing, and presenting papers. So one particular summer, I was at the University of Chicago, and I was paired with a professor, two actually, and these professors are research aligned. So that's why I was working with them. My research project was studying incarcerated women in Illinois and how there's like a kind of like a pipeline to prison through the educational system. So it's a poverty, poor education, and then eventually prison. So it's a pipeline. And so I was researching that, and then the professors that I was paired with, Dr. Susan George and Dr. Robert Lalonde, both who unfortunately have passed. Dr. Susan George passed a couple years ago, and Dr. Robert Lalonde passed earlier this year. Both professors at the University of Chicago, Harris School of Public Policy. So their research project was they were writing a project about incarcerated mothers and their children, and they were using this data to help influence policy because a lot of the women who were going to jail and prison were nonviolent offenders who were mostly drug addicts, and they were going to jail. And one of the things that they found was that a lot of them who were mothers were losing custody of their children because they were in jail. And those children were becoming wards of the state. And it was creating another system, another generation of children just in the system. And of course, the likelihood of those children then later becoming incarcerated was very high because they are already in the system as foster children because their mother is in jail. So one of the things that the professors tried to do was to influence public policy and change that and have women who were convicted for nonviolent offenses to be remanded to drug treatment programs so that they could stay with their children. It would not break the family apart, and the children would not be, a ward of the state in state custody. So my part in that as their intern was to go to Cook County Jail and collect the narratives of some of these women. And what I realized is that there was a pattern with these women who were incarcerated. Again, all non-violent offenses. Majority of them were drug addicts. They were arrested for theft, check fraud, and prostitution. And it was a very emotional thing because it's an overwhelming number of African American women. And so by the end of that summer, I began thinking, what can I do? How can I help this situation? And what can I bring to this to help not just these women, but help to prevent so many women from going to jail? education is wonderful and is great, but this situation needed something more immediate. And education is not always um, promised to bring about change, economic development. Sometimes there is a lot of graduate students who simply can't find a job, and I was one of them. So I know that education is not always the answer. Um, so what I determined was that these women need to be self-determining. They need to be self-sufficient. So they needed their own business, doing whatever whatever skills and talents they had. They needed to become business owners so that they could support themselves and their children. And so I was already in school to become a professor, so I understood pedagogy with the science of teaching. So from there, I just decided to go to business school and learn how to start, operate, and create a business, and then teach that to other people and other women and how they can start a business and support themselves, because most of these women what I learned was that they were dependent on someone else. Either they were dependent on a man or they were dependent on the state to support them. And so that was, for me, that's a huge downfall when you have to depend on someone besides yourself um, to take care of you, because at that point you're no longer self-determining. So I went to business school, learned how to operate a business, start and operate a business, and um, began teaching consulting. Um, of course, at that time, I was in graduate school by then, and I had no knowledge and very little experience of consulting. So I started doing it for free, and I started working with local hip hop artists and teaching them, or consulting them. And once, after a couple clients, and once I realized, I can create a campaign, I can increase brand awareness, I've built up my event planning skills and marketing skills and PR. I can, book shows for artists. Once I learned how to do that, um, you know, my business started to increase, and I started to contact small businesses and asking them, can I create a campaign for you, do some consulting, help your business to grow, especially during the holidays. And that's how I got started in entrepreneurship. So the next question is, um, what were some of the challenges that I was faced with when I started? Some of the biggest challenges was just simply not knowing um, what to do, how to get started. I had not developed any processes at that time. I think Facebook was just starting. I don't even think there was a YouTube yet. So I didn't have the information that's accessible to me now that's online. So my biggest challenges was trying to get a feel for how to get started, figuring out my processes, and I didn't know my processes. So how did I overcome those challenges? I asked a lot of questions. I would contact my professors and ask them questions. I would um, I don't even know if I even reached out to like the SBA or anything, but I would just ask questions, and I felt my way through the entire process, just, learn by doing, kind of just feel your way through it. But the good thing is also I read a lot of books. And so I gained a lot of knowledge from reading books. And so that's how I overcame those challenges. So next question. And people also want to know, like, what's a typical day in the life of a consultant? Because a lot of people don't know what consultants do. So, like, what do a consultant do during the day? What's a typical day? I wake up about 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. Um, now, my workout routine consists of walking. Luckily, I have a dog, so it forces me to get up and go outside and walk several times throughout the day. I try to meal prep so that I don't eat bad and cheat on my diet. And then after that, I usually do some customer acquisition. Um, and there are different ways that I do customer acquisition, but I'll usually try to spend an hour or two doing customer acquisition in the morning. And then also emailing, phone calls, emailing people back, returning phone calls, things like that. And because I write a lot, I publish a magazine, I write for some of my clients. About 6 or 7 hours of my day is writing. So I do a lot of writing. And then I usually try to go to bed around 11 o'clock. Sometimes that varies because if I'm working on something, I may not go to sleep till about 2 or 3 in the morning. And then I'm up about 6 or 7. I try to be up about 6 or 7 at least. So not a lot of sleep, but I'm used to operating and functioning with, you know, little sleep. Okay, next question. What is the number one reason you wanted to become an entrepreneur, and what kind of motivated you to become an entrepreneur? Well, there are several reasons. The first reason was what I started out with at the beginning of this video. I told you the story about what got me into wanting to become an entrepreneur, and that is still one of the biggest reasons why I love what I do, is because I help people, particularly women, start and grow their businesses. And that's why I got into entrepreneurship, because I wanted to help women become self-determining. And there's nothing like earning your own money, being your own boss, to make you self-determining. You have to be so. I believe all women need to be self-sufficient and earn their own money. Even if you're a stay-at-home mom, just always being self-sufficient, so that you can be self-determining. So that's the first reason. The second reason is I wanted to try my own course. For a couple of years, I taught at the university. I taught at a university, and I noticed over time that teaching today is not the same as when I was in the university as a student, because today teaching is more about entertainment than it is about teaching. And when I began to realize that, I became, uninterested in teaching in a traditional setting. And so I still teach, but I teach online through my own school. Um, Also, what prompted me to become an entrepreneur is I wanted to leave my children a legacy. And that's such a powerful thing, to be able to leave your children a business, a sustainable business to leave your children. That's so powerful. Um, I like Line Cool beer, and I know about the company. Um, I think it's awesome because the company was started by the, I think it's the great grandfather. And so they're on their fourth or fifth generation of children who are now running that company. And that's just such a powerful thing to me, to have 4 or 5 generations later, you're still benefiting off what your great great grandfather started. I just think that's so powerful. And I always joke and say that I want my great great grandchildren to be able to look at a portrait of me and say, thank you, for the wealth that I created and left them. So that's the other reason why I wanted to start my own business. I wanted to help women. I wanted to chart my own course and be self determining and earn money without limitations uh, placed on my worth, my value, and to leave a legacy for my children. So the next question is, what is the hardest part about being an entrepreneur? Um, the hardest part was in the beginning, trying to find my way, trying to create processes, and I didn't know how to start, where to begin. That's why I encourage people all the time to get a coach. And then to me, coaching was not a big thing at that time, like it is now. But um, a coach is a very valuable person because they save you so much time and energy and loss in helping you to establish and set up your process and create um, your business processes so that you don't waste a lot of time. And so I recommend to everyone to, when you first start out as an entrepreneur, to get a coach. Next question. What is the best tip for people who are starting out? The first thing is to get a coach when you're starting out. Uh, Also, to work smart and don't spend money where you don't have to. If and this is a shameless plug, but if you if you subscribe to my magazine, Global Influencers magazine, and you read this issue, welcome from the editor, I talk about this in the magazine about being frugal when you start a business. Don't go out spending a bunch of money. Find free resources or very cheap resources to use. Because one thing about not spending a lot of money, it forces you to be creative. And the more creative you are, the more you create. You distinguish your business from other businesses. So being very frugal when you start, developing your process is another thing that is a best tip for people who are just starting out. And your coach is very important because your coach will help you to establish your process so that your business runs very professional, very efficient. Also, developing your products. When you start, you don't want to spend a lot of time, learning all these things that a coach can help you with. You can focus then your time on developing products, writing books, creating courses, whatever your business does, so that you can have products to sell. And also, the best tip is build your team. Work on building a team. At first, when you start out, it's going to be difficult because you're not going to have a team. But when you finally build up your business and you're at a point where you're able to bring on people on board, you'll find your business grows and flourishes exponentially because you have a team and you don't have to focus on doing all that work. You're now able to be out selling and creating wealth. So the next question is, if I had to start over with about a couple $1,000s, $5,000, what would I invest it in? Well, when I started, I didn't have any money. So I completely bootstrapped it. I started with absolutely no money. And so that wasn't a luxury for me. Now, if I had to do it over again, I wouldn't do a lot differently, um, because I would still be very, very frugal because, again, being frugal in business, it forces you to be creative. What I would do is I would invest in a coach because the coach will help you to develop your processes and save you a lot of time and headache and probably money. I would also invest in marketing the business. So I would put money into marketing because that's important. And I would also invest in customer acquisition tools, anything that helps to generate leads for your business that's affordable. I would invest in that. So a coach, the three things I would invest in is a coach, marketing, and customer acquisition tools. Okay. So next question. What is your favorite tool that you use to automate your business? One of my favorite tools that I still use, and it's a free tool, and that I recommend to people all the time is to use Google Forms. I am a fanatic for Google Forms. I love using Google Forms. It's a free platform, a free tool, and um, now it's even better because you can integrate Google Forms with other applications and platforms to make automation even easier and more efficient. And so I that's one um, tool, automated tool that I would use is Google Forms. Okay, next question. So, what is the number one book that I would recommend for entrepreneurs? I have two actually. The book that I would recommend for entrepreneurs is my all-time favorite, Dennis Kimbro's "What Makes the Great Great." I absolutely love that book, and I've read it several times. I love the book because one thing that it teaches people who are interested in becoming an entrepreneur, the very first thing and the most important thing is that you have to be disciplined. If you want to be an entrepreneur, you have to develop discipline because nobody's standing over your shoulder, making sure you're doing what you're supposed to do. It's all on you. So you have to be very disciplined. So that's one of the reasons I like the book. The other reason is because the book also teaches you about each of the influencers or entrepreneurs, what processes they use to become great. And that's interesting because it speaks to the importance of you developing your process. And you can also glean from these entrepreneurs the processes that they use and glean from that and take from that what you can and implement it into your business with your own spin on it and use it to create a process for yourself to grow your business. The second book that I would recommend is a book that I'm actually reading now that was gifted to me at a networking event. Um, it's called Sold: The Art of Relationship Sales Using Emotional Intelligence and Authentic Leadership. So I'm like a couple chapters into this book, and I really like it because, interestingly, that is where I am in my business now. So I've created my processes, I've automated as much as possible, and I continue to tweak it and upgrade. I've created my products, and what I'm focused on now is sales and how to get better at selling. And this is interesting because it talks about how to build the relationships through sales because the sales is really a relationship between the seller and the prospective customer or client. And so building that relationship and creating that emotional connection and getting started. So that's where I am now. And so that's why this book is like perfect for me And I would recommend that to entrepreneurs just getting started because sales is so very important. If you're not selling, you can't stay in business. You have to sell. And it's good to know like the science of selling and develop your process of selling and your techniques. Okay, next question. Um, so how do you get clients? So for each person, it's different, but for me, the best way to get clients is through attending networking events. And so I try to attend as many networking events as possible. Some people network online, some people network in person. I think both are great. For me and my business personally, because a lot of my clients are high end clients, I do a lot of in person networking events. But nevertheless, networking is how you get clients. And I recommend to my clients that they should attend a networking event. Try to attend at least one per month. Okay, next question is um, what does it take to get started doing consulting? It takes a lot of grit and grind because you have to be out there. You have to go out and get customers. People don't call you. They don't come and give you money. You have to go out and get customers. And so you have to have a lot of grit and grind about you. Um, you have to do a lot of networking because again, with consulting, that's how you get your clients. You have to network and develop relationships with people, develop your processes. You want to develop efficient processes. You want to automate as much as possible because usually with a boutique consulting company, it's just you. And so in order for you to get out and go sell, you have to make sure that all of those other things are automated and the processes are all in place. So this is why creating processes and automating them are very important. And the most important thing, if you want to be a consultant, is to be able to hear no and to keep going. And to either hear no and then say, okay, and then check back with them 3 months later, check back 6 months later, check back 9 months later, until eventually you get a yes. Or if that's not the case, then hear no, but then be on to the next person, on to the next business. So, yeah. Okay, next question. So, what is the secret to becoming a good writer and marketer? And that's a really good question because I tell people I don't care what profession you're in, you need to know how to write. And as well as I used to tell my students, I don't care what major you're in, you need to know how to write. You can be studying PE, but you still need to be able to write. So writing is very important. And I'll tell you what I told my students for many years. The first thing to becoming a good writer is to read great writing. So you want to find the top people in your industry who have written books and read their work and try to gauge how they write, the style that they write. Um, Also, reading good writing like the Washington Post, the New York Times. When you read good writing, you replicate good writing. The last question is what is your routine for writing a book? So, this will be my third book now. And what is my routine? I use the same routine, the same approach rather, that I use when I was in graduate school writing a paper. I first have a topic and then I create a summary from my topic. And from that summary, I create an outline. And from that outline, I gradually work through each point, writing about that and until it's the project is finished. One of the most important things to writing a book, though, is that you have to be consistent. So I always advise people to create a schedule and try to stick to that schedule as much as possible for writing. And before long, within a couple months, a year, you're finished. You have a completed book, and you can take this book, you can sell it, you can use it to get speaking engagements, and and it will help to solidify you as a authority within your field. So those were all the questions. I hope that you found value in this, and I hope that it helped you to generate your own ideas of why you started your own business and got into entrepreneurship, and what things you can glean from this and incorporate into your business, or advocate for other people to start a business if you're a coach. And maybe I mentioned something that you say, I think I'll use it and tell people that's why they should become an entrepreneur. So also like, comment, and share, and I will talk to you soon. Take care.